Hello everyone and welcome to the Going Against the Grain podcast. As always, I am Taylor.
And I'm still Dan.
Indeed. It's been a while, hasn't it, since you saw us, and that's because our last video got taken down.
Yeah.
We got the big ban hammer from YouTube on that video, so we're not going to be talking about the topic that was in that video because we don't want to get taken down again. So we thought we'd see if we can get cancelled in any other way that we possibly can think of. I'm joking, YouTube employee who's watching this video. We are going to be talking about some contentious topics because me and Dan, well, we've worked together for a long while. We probably don't know each other that well. Don't know that much about each other. So we're going to get each other's genuine opinion on a lot of contentious topics. And yeah, hopefully neither of us leave with a black eye. We shall see.
Hey, let's go.
So we have several different sort of overall topics to talk about, and then there's multiple sort of statements within them. The first one we're doing is social and political issues. So the first one is all people should have the right to own guns. Opinion.
You want mine first?
Yeah.
No, because some people are fucking stupid. And I don't think it needs too much more explaining than looking at the amount of misuse of guns in America. That's the problem. I mean, we've got data. We've got data to show that over a population size of what? Fucking, you know. Oh, hello. Hello, that's better, isn't it? Yeah, population size of 360, 370 million. Let's just estimate that 300 million of those are of legal age to own a gun. And yet somehow schools keep getting shot up. That's not good. I don't really want that happening here, if I'm honest. Although there was one kid at my school that went on a bit of a rampage with a pair of scissors and a moped. Other than that, we don't get lots of people dying. So,
No.
you know, that's my opinion. Don't let them have guns.
I can see both sides of the argument. I disagree with all people for obvious reasons.
Yes.
Not all people should have the right to own guns. I've just realised I've left my fucking up there and it's going to annoy me. But under certain circumstances, I can see the American argument because specifically for things like home defence. I can see the benefit because in a lot of states in America, if you have a home intruder, it's technically legal to shoot them.
Yeah.
So I think for that, it is quite a good deterrent in that way, that if you break into a house in America, in most places, you're under the risk of being shot. Yeah. There's no chance of you being shot in Britain.
No.
Well, not really, unless you really piss off the police. So yeah, I can see that. The problem is the British mentality is a bit different to the American mentality, isn't it? And I know that British people, if someone didn't queue properly, would use them. So, or you put the milk in first, or something like that. You would just use them. I know I would. So yeah, I think it's in this country specifically. I think it's a good thing that most people don't have guns.
Gotcha.
The death penalty should be reintroduced. Discuss.
Here's my discussion. We actually did this topic at school to do with is it David or Derek Bentley was the last British person to be killed? Not the lady that killed her husband, who was the last human individual in this country to be given the death penalty. But yeah, it was a very interesting topic. My main reason for saying yes, it should be reintroduced is that I don't think I should be responsible as a taxpayer for keeping somebody in prison at the ripe old sum of £80,000 per year per inmate. Fuck 'em. I'm sorry. Like, what is the point of having rules and a judicial system if the deterrent is just hampering the economy that they've committed the offence in? That's madness. Why the hell should we as people who want to try and contribute towards better public servant salaries, better roads, better facilities within the NHS, for example, why would I sacrifice the money that should go to that and give that technically to a guy that's just killed or raped someone? No, you don't deserve that lovely cell. You don't deserve a bed, full stop. Like, I know that there's like a sort of basic level we think humans should be treated to, but if you do something so inhumane, then why are you being treated as a bloody human? Like, there isn't enough of a deterrent to stop people committing these crimes. Otherwise, prisons wouldn't be full. We've just let go of, was it 1,300 prisoners, early sentences. I don't know, I haven't looked into this too much. In fact, I haven't looked into it at all. I just heard it. But I don't know what crimes the average person that's been released early has committed.
Well, put it this way, one of them's already killed someone.
There we go. He'd been better off just dead. Why have we spunk loads of money keeping him in a fucking prison where poor people are getting attacked that work in the prisons trying to defend themselves? It's just, none of it makes much sense. What we're trying to do is be human and kind whilst punishing. Those two things don't really go hand in glove, in my opinion. So yeah, I personally would bring it back, but for very extreme cases. I'm not saying just because there's bits like manslaughter, for example, I don't think should be punishable by death. Because by definition it was an unintentional kill, if you like. Whereas murder, if you're going to take a life, don't make it cost the economy 80 grand times by 25. That is mental. Over £1 million to keep a murderer locked away from the general public to keep them safe. If the objective is to keep them safe, don't lock them up, get rid of them. There you go.
See, I'm completely the opposite. I'm very, very against the death penalty as a concept. I don't believe in an eye for an eye. I don't think that... I mean, you were taught as a kid, 2 wrongs don't make a right. I don't think just because someone has done something in their past, it means that then... I understand from the victim point of view. I'm looking at this purely from a fence-sitting point of view. Plus, when people are on death row in America, there's so many appeals and so many court processes that have to go through that it actually ends up costing the same. Or within, it's not a significant saving because there's so much bureaucracy that you have to go through in order to kill someone. And it just leaves the door open for mistakes. So did you read the guy, I can't remember, I think his first name was Marcel or something like that. It was this week. And there was quite clear evidence that he was not guilty, and the courts pushed it out and he was executed this week.
Well, in America?
Yeah.
Right.
Even though, so it just leaves the door open for mistakes, because if you push through this death penalty process and it comes out 10 years later that the person you've killed didn't do it, the system doesn't work.
But the system's not working now, keeping somebody in a room. All those same errors, I hear your point, all those same errors are still occurring. The only difference is that individual is stuck in a torturous environment, psychologically and physically. Like, if you have not committed that crime, you're probably not of the mental ilk to be defending yourself in an environment where it is just pure rage, testosterone and psychos. You're not built for it.
It's a bit less absolutist though, isn't it?
Correct.
Mistakes happen, we understand that, but like, I can't remember the guy's name. There was a guy who was convicted of murder. I mean, there was a guy, I don't know if you've heard of him, called Raphael Rowe. You might have seen him on podcasts and stuff. He was convicted of a murder and he didn't do it.
Yeah.
But under a death penalty thing where it happens quicker than in America, let's say, he would be dead.
Yeah.
Even though he didn't do it. And he's not in a small group. There is quite a lot where bureaucratic process fails the people because you accuse the wrong person or you convict the wrong person. It happens a lot, and I think that the death penalty is too absolutist for things like that.
I get that. Again, the shift of reintroducing such a law like that, you would have to review everything. I'm not just saying it. Let's carry on with the current framework, judicial framework, and let's just plop murder in there, like killing murderers, because that's not going to work, obviously. If you make a shift and reintroduce the death penalty, you need to look at all the practices that are currently happening within the legal system.
Even with a murder like that, does it extend to people who were there when it happened, or is it only the person who plunged the knife? Is it someone who lured someone in order to be murdered? Does that count? There's a lot of processes that would have to be in place, and I think A, it would never happen. B, it leaves the door open for far too many mistakes, which will cost. You think if rather than keeping someone locked up for 10 years and then finding them innocent, if you'd killed them, you think of the repayments that it would have to be, the reparations for having done that. But I don't think it would save any money.
Well, no, but that's because, again, the existing framework would have to change. What you can't have would be the current situation where people are profiting, and I mean drastically, becoming multi-millionaires on some cases, just for keeping somebody out of prison. So the defendant side of things within the legal framework we currently all live under, in the UK specifically, people are making lots of money out of it. Of course you're going to have people wrongfully convicted, because what matters to that lawyer, what's most important to them, is getting paid for winning their case. That's not right. There shouldn't be somebody being paid 150 grand a year to keep criminals out of prison. That shouldn't exist. The existing system's fucked. I know that we're all just kind of used to it and we all just put up with it and go, well, that's what I was born into, so we're just going to stick with that.
Well,
but it's not right.
I don't necessarily agree with that sentiment, because it's the only way to achieve true democracy, isn't it? Because in a traditional trial, you are reviewed by a jury of your peers.
Yes.
So if you remove that, then is it actually democratic?
What, having a cash incentive of $300,000?
No, I see what you're saying,
So
but that's where it comes from, isn't it? It's about convincing the 12, however many people,
Mm.
one way or the other. That's all they're doing, realistically.
Which is insane.
And yes, okay, it is insane, but I would say that it prevails the correct way more. Obviously, there's mistakes, as I've said with the death penalty. There's going to be mistakes. There's going to be lawyers who are Robert Kardashian, for example.
It's a joke.
Well, yeah, exactly.
It is a joke.
But I think as it's a bit like, it's dumbing it down. It's a bit like the discussion about penalty shootouts in football. People keep saying it's not a good way to decide a game, and people go, "Okay, what's the alternative?" And then people go,
"Yeah, but this is different." With regards to this very specific question, if you gave me 3 months, right, with a team of lawyers or whatever to build a logical framework, everything would have to get shifted and changed. Like this, I say, it's not a one change fix here. The whole thing has to change. But the fact that you can currently, another thing that makes it completely unfair, by the way, I think a lot of the individuals that have been wrongfully convicted, those individuals are probably, and I don't know this, but I'd definitely put money on this. I reckon that the average individual that does get wrongfully convicted is from a lower social economic background, i.e. they don't have the same funds as an O.J. Simpson, for example, where we saw a man that 95% of the fucking world thinks he killed his wife, but yet for some reason he gets away with it because he's a multi-millionaire, for no other reason than he has access to resources in a capitalist society that means he can cheat the game. That's mental. You shouldn't be able to cheat whether someone has or hasn't killed someone, because it's a factual thing. You have, or you haven't. There must be a way of gaining enough evidence and squashing these ultra-rich people that are cheating. They are cheating. It's disgusting. It's wrong.
Yeah, I agree. What I will jump in and say is we've got 31 topics and we're on 2.
We won't go through all of them
so
today.
I'm going to draw that one to a close, otherwise we'll be here forever. Me and Dan don't agree. We'll step there. All drugs should be legalised.
That's a very vague way of putting the question, but I'll try and answer it as best I can. And you've not asked the question incorrectly, because you can't. Again, similar to the death penalty.
It's open to interpretation.
Yeah. In terms of legalising, there's different ways of doing it. So like in Portugal, for example, where everything has been decriminalised, that method, if you look at the data, is the most successful method currently in terms of drug policies in Europe, but yet you don't get sent to prison if you use them. So why the hell everybody else is just sticking with this antiquated system of, well, no, they're bad for you, they're going to kill you. That fucker is willing to kill himself with it. Let the poor sod do what he wants to do, unless it is impacting others. Now, the industry of drugs impacts everybody, technically. So, again, so many bits would have to be changed to make this work correctly. I'm not saying legalise it so it gets sold in shops up and down the country. I'm not saying legalise it so it can be marketed and promoted. But what I'm saying is decriminalisation is a means of actually educating people rather than just punishing them. Because the crime in and of itself, the drug addict that's going to purchase is not buying that with the intentions of hurting other people. They are buying that with the sole intention of escaping what quite frankly is their sad reality. Now, that comment is not me having a go at people who use drugs in any way, shape or form. I just mean literally, if you are an addict and you are looking to escape your reality on a regular basis, it's because you're not happy. These individuals are not going out there trying to kill people. The gangs that sell them, maybe. But again, there's gangs that sell them that are willing to kill people because of the structure of the legalisation of it, or lack of. That's why they're willing to commit such abhorrent things and torture people, go and rob other gangs and then kill them and then sell their drugs, because it breeds that. So if you change the framework and you amend it so it's more about education rather than don't touch this big red button, yeah, every human being is going to try and touch the big red fucking button then, aren't they? Not every, by the way, but do you know what I'm saying? There's a vast percentage of individuals over the past 50 years that were born in the last 50 years that have tried narcotics illegally. You don't even know what they're buying.
No.
They've not got a clue. So
that's where my opinion comes from. I think it's a little bit misleading in where it says all drugs. I think my interpretation of this is recreational drugs. And in which case, yes. But I think if you were to say all drugs as a blanket, then no. Because there's certain drugs where really the only use of them is nefarious. You think GHB. Mm-hmm. There's no real recreational benefit to taking GHB, is there? Unless you want to knock yourself out for a little while.
Oh, God, I can't use any names or anything in this, but I do know of a certain community where GHB is used recreationally.
Okay, that's odd.
Yeah, very. It's like micro-dosing, and it gives you a similar effect to ketamine, I've been told.
Oh, right, okay.
And basically that's fun, but it only takes a slip and then this person's not having fun.
Yeah, so I think, and stuff like scopolamine and stuff like that, there's no... Have you never heard of scopolamine?
What the fuck is that?
It's used, I think it's in, don't quote me, I think it's in South America or Asia. Basically, it's a dust that you blow into someone's face, and they, for a while, will become very, very susceptible to suggestion.
Really?
Yeah. So stuff like that, nothing good can come from that. Do you know what I mean? So I think that in terms of things that you would normally, I'm not going to name them because YouTube will shout at me, but the things that you think of when you think recreational drugs, yes, I think they should be legalised, mandated, and then support systems put in place for problem users, much like there is for alcohol, for example.
Yeah.
So you have AA, you have doctors that specialise in that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I think that the amount of problem users and people who are injured by them would be much lessened, because it would be mandated that they have to be a certain purity and they have to only be sold in certain amounts so that it can't be a problem issue. And then the people who are problem users in terms of overuse can get the help they need, because it will be funded by the taxes that will be put on the legalisation of them. So again, misleading title for that one, but recreationally yes, all drugs no, for me.
Interesting. Even so, for example, I'm not allowed to use the word, but if we said the one that begins with H, for example, can I say that?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we'll soon see. It might get taken down. I hope not. But that one, for example, although it is currently a criminal substance, why is every pharma company allowed to use it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's the same as like ketamine. You're allowed to use it as a medicine in hospital, but you can't use it recreationally. Yes, I see what you mean. With that, I know that it's not most of the problems, but some of the problems that come from using that particular drug come from the impurity of it, because it can be cut with things like fentanyl and stuff like that. When that happens, it becomes incredibly dangerous. But I think if it was someone who was a problem user, I think if the right steps were put in beforehand, I don't know that some of the people who end up taking, I'm just going to say it, who end up taking heroin, I don't know that they would get there, because it's a slippery slope. I don't think anyone, well, there will be some people, but I don't think most people will start with something like heroin. Now, I've never agreed with the whole gateway drug thing, but because heroin has such a stigma around it, I would very much doubt that anyone starts with it. Do you know what I mean? I think it would be a case of chasing it through other means. So I think if people who were already problem users went somewhere like they do with methadone, when you get off of it, you go to a place, you take it, you are then observed to make sure you're not dying,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's mandated like that, you would bring down the problem users of that very, very quickly.
Yeah, of course you would.
So I think that even stuff like that, there's ways. I don't know that I would then legalise that recreationally. It's difficult. It's a difficult sort of thing because I don't know. I'm not massively clued up on the specific effects on the body of something like heroin.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's not good for you, but I don't know how much of that is the impurity of it as opposed to the drug itself.
Yeah.
Because I know, So I think that if it was mandated and there was laws put in place where a purity was set, and even if it was impure, it was cut with things for people who don't want really, really strong drugs.
Yeah.
If it was cut with something that is safe.
Yes.
As opposed to whatever the fuck white powder they can find.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's a weird one. It's a tricky thing. It would never happen in this country. I don't think we're far too conservative with a small c in this country to ever achieve that. But yeah, I can see it happening in other places where they're a little bit more liberal than we are.
Yeah.
Right. Next one. Juveniles should be tried and treated as adults.
That's a fucking tough one, that. There's some prime cases that kind of spring to mind.
Yeah, you can say the people's names, don't say the kid's name. I know what you're thinking.
Okay, yeah, I don't know their names.
Okay, so I won't. Robert Thompson and John Venables.
Yes, thank you, John Venables. And one of those guys being let out of...
Don't describe them. Don't say any descriptive words about them.
No, I don't know.
That's fine. Just don't say, the one or anything like that, because it's actually illegal to do that.
Really?
Do you not know this?
No.
There's a global injunction. So what we're talking about is a particular case. It's very, very famous in the UK where two young boys called Robert Thompson and John Venables. I don't know what I can say. I don't know what I'm allowed to say. This is the thing. I need to be really careful. But let's just say it as it is. They murdered a small boy. They were... Basically, when they got arrested, there was a lynch mob around them. Obviously, the entire country wanted them dead. They were hated. So what happened is they spent several years in a juvenile detention facility, and then they were released. Upon release, they were given new identities, new names, everything like that. And there was a global injunction put on any descriptive word that would lead you to believe the true identity of either of these people. So
Seriously?
I can't even tell you, what colour John Venables' hair is without breaking international law.
That is so insane.
Yeah. It's even more insane when you hear that Venables has blown his identity at least 4 times.
And also he got caught, if I'm not mistaken, can I mention that?
You call it the first letter.
Yeah. He got caught with indecent stuff.
Just call it CP.
CP, yeah, if you get the acronym.
Yeah.
And it's obviously something happened in that young man's childhood that has led him to think that these acts, etc., are okay. But I understand why you try and forgive kids, because they're not adults yet, they don't know life, and they have been fully influenced by whatever parental figures they have. So I understand there's a slight argument to say, well, wait a minute, give these kids, and I do mean kids, a second chance. But I think there are certain crimes that any human being at any age, if they're willing to commit that, it's highly unlikely that individual is going to be fixed, very inverted commas fixed, for you to justify the act and go through with something rather than just thinking about it. That, I would argue, is signs of psychotic behaviours. Now, if you have psychosis or whatever, or you are psychotic by definition, to try and retrain that and protect the general public against it is not, unfortunately, in my opinion, it's not worth it. It shouldn't be about protecting that individual's life, because that's the law. I don't see how that's right. I don't think, how's that going to deter other kids from making such terrible choices? I don't think it does. I don't think you can actually train that out of somebody who is just broken. And I don't want to be walking down the street knowing that I've paid for them to still be going. I want them. I'm not saying they. Again, we're going back to the death penalty thing for me here a little bit, but in terms of just trying juveniles as adults, I don't think I fully agree. That you shouldn't put a 12-year-old into a general population prison with men who have murdered, raped, etc. That's not. So you can blank those. Sorry.
Yeah, don't say the R word.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, those kind of things got to be factored in. It's a tough one for me, this one, if I'm honest. But in some extent, some examples I think they should be trialed the same way, and other ones they shouldn't.
My opinion on it is a bit shorter than that. I think it's a case of give them the benefit of the doubt the first time, because environmental factors, upbringing, things like that. Okay, yes, it definitely impacts someone that young because they're very impressionable. Mm-hmm. If it then happens again after the steps have been put in place, the help has been given, then try them as adults.
Yeah.
And then they, if everything has been put in place to try and help them to not do that, and they still do it, then I've got very much less sympathy for them.
Yeah, agreed.
Simple as that.
Agreed.
Climate change is the greatest threat facing humanity today. I can go first if you want.
Go on, Tay.
No, not even close. I think that in this current time, I think climate change, I'm not a denier at all, not even close. I know that it is happening. But I think that it's a lot of... I think the public perception of climate change has really dulled in the last sort of 10, 15 years, because the public keeps getting told we've got so many years to reverse this, or this is going to happen, and nothing ever happens. Now, I'm not saying nothing happens, I know it does, but I think the greatest threat facing humanity now, right this second, is global political, not in terms of the planet itself. I think there's far more threat from places like Russia or North Korea and stuff like that would be a more active threat to the people of this country than climate change at the minute.
Makes sense. Does make sense. I do partly agree. I guess it depends on what your definition is of humanity, because like you've just referenced obviously this country, and you've referenced other political nations and whatever that could be a threat to us physically through the act of war, for example. I get that. That could well happen. I know there's a lot of kind of measures in place now that if somebody did basically trigger a nuke world war, that there's safety things in place to a degree, right? Not enough. Because if one nuke goes off, lots of nukes are going to go off, and then we're all in big trouble. I think fundamentally we are so ignorant, naive, and completely unintelligent when it comes to space in general, that even though now we have mechanisms of, like, say, blowing up asteroids that are going to come and hit Earth, fundamentally, one of those, a mile in diameter, hits Earth, the whole Earth changes. Like, and I don't think people really understand the scale, or they don't want to think about the scale because then they keep thinking about it and they worry about it. Don't. It's just a fact. If a big rock hits this fucking Earth, what we have as an atmosphere that allows us to live, and for there to be life, for there to be water, for there to be photosynthesis for plants, etc., all of that goes. If that goes, humanity, as my definition, which is every human being on the planet, you can forget about it. A nuke war, there are so many thousands of people now across the globe that have got bunkers. Like, humanity won't end. As soon as that first nuke goes off, they're in their bunker. Humans are still going, but an asteroid hitting, 2, 3, 4, 5 asteroids hitting, and you've got the Hunger Dryas situation that happened back 11,800 years ago, that is a very different kettle of fish. But for those of you that don't know what the Hunger Dryas is, I strongly recommend you have a little watch of some Graham Hancock bits, because he's very well informed, and so is Carlson. I've forgotten his first name. But again, two guys that are on the Rogan podcast a lot. That to me is interesting science. That to me is interesting, genuinely could end life on Earth. And it's like, well, okay, it's out of our control. Don't stress about it, because you can't fix it. Even if you can shoot an asteroid and you do blow it up, say, as it's entering Earth's atmosphere, it just scatters. It just breaks down and then you get loads more impact. So we don't have a solution. And if any political person says they do, I'd take that with a pinch of salt, personally. They just don't want us to panic.
Mm.
But the fact is, we are at risk at any given second of any given day being whacked by a block of space material that completely changes what we believe to be life.
Yeah, sort of. I mean, they do track all of this stuff. They do know where all this stuff... Anyway, far too many to keep talking about stuff. So, all people should have a universal basic income. I can go first or I can go second. Go first? No, absolutely not. That's pseudo-communism. I don't agree with that at all. It doesn't incentivise people to actually benefit society because people could happily just live on a universal basic income.
Yeah.
So, no. I mean, if the majority of the planet did that, the democracy as we know it would fall apart.
Yeah.
Because you wouldn't have things like public services, you wouldn't have a healthcare system, you wouldn't have...
Sorry, why would you not have those things? Because
I'm just saying if everyone decided, no, we've got a universal basic income, I'm not working anymore.
Well, that's only if... Not everybody's attitude is like that, though.
No, but what I'm saying, that's just what I'm saying. If worst case scenario,
yes,
if that was the case and everyone just went, no, I'm not working.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't agree with that. It's basically a capitalist version of communism, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because you're giving people money rather than resources, but...
Yeah, I do partly agree there. I think, again, if you look at what society is currently used to, trying to U-turn 6 to 7 billion people is nigh on impossible, right? So we are now all currently au fait with the capitalist society, and we live in it, despite the fact that it's so terrible. And it is, subjectively, in my opinion, it is terrible, because there are certain people that are disadvantaged. Now, out of no fault of their own, this is true, right? Otherwise, you wouldn't have the top 1% of global earners bringing in $32,000. That's all it takes to be in the top 1% of global earners. We in the West look at it like, no, capitalism is great. Capitalism's absolutely fucking brilliant. You try telling that to the countries that have got the world's worst GDPs. They are not going to agree with you. So what are we doing? Are we trying to appease the majority or the minority? Capitalism has created a society, a global society, that benefits the very few. And that is wrong morally and for many more reasons. Just because Africa doesn't have rain, for example, as much as we do in Europe, they can't grow the certain crops and stuff. Does that mean that they deserve a substandard of living? No.
Game's the game.
Well, of course we're going to say the game's the game because we've got fucking sweet, haven't we? I genuinely view everything in life. I look at it, I always think about, is my situation bad? Yes or no? The answer's no, every fucking time. Doesn't matter if a family member's died, doesn't matter what's happened. I know how lucky I am because some kids are born into existence. Their mother's got malaria or AIDS and, passes away within 6 weeks of birth. If that kid has nobody to look after it, it's then dead. Like, this is absolutely crazy. People don't want to think about it because it's sad. Deal with it. Accept the fact it's true and then try and make positive changes. So for me, universal income would be great for the countries that don't have the same advantages as us. But yeah, of course, for us, we're going to go, yeah, but it reduces productivity. Yes, it, X, Y, Z. There's negatives. Of course there's negatives. Negatives to anything that you choose to do, especially when you're talking about 7 billion people. If you look at it just on country by country, I think you could make some of these systems work a lot more efficiently. But
yeah, I mean, I'm very much twisting this towards me, personally, where I live, what I do, what I know. So
yeah, and I agree. Because we have got it so cushy here. Like, there are people that don't have to work a day in their life. They can just claim benefits. And it's a trap. It's a poverty trap. It is. Because it's hard to get an income of 40 grand a year. But the government will subsidise that if you cannot get a job. So it's like, of course you're going to get people taking the easy route. Of course you are. There's an option to allow them to do so. So, that system's not correct. But, yeah, for me, there should be a better balance than what there is. Do I think it should be universally equal? No. Do I think doctors deserve more than defence lawyers? Yes.
I knew you were going to say that.
I wasn't going to go down that road. But, sports people, for example, well done. I don't take away from the fact that in the current society and the way that it's set up, if someone gets paid £500,000 a week because they are that skilled at their job, then, it's fair technically in current standards. Do I agree with it? No. Morally, I think that's absurd. Someone getting paid £500,000 a week. It's ridiculous. While people can't put food on their table. We're raising money for food banks at the minute. What the fuck? How is that even a thing when someone's earning £500,000 a week?
How is it a thing in a country that spends £300 billion a year on their defence?
Who? UK?
Yeah.
300 billion,
Something like that, yeah.
It's just
It's like half the budget. Well,
Yeah.
what the fuck are you doing? We haven't had a war for 80 years. Yeah, you could say, well, that's down to defence spending.
Yeah.
Well, I don't mean to sound like a Brexity boomer, but look after your own first. Do you know what I mean? Rather than, like, yeah, anyway. Sex work should be legal. Short answer for me, yes, should be legal, mandated, and, given the same rights as any other work, because then it would take away the predatory nature of what it can be.
Yeah. I like that.
Yeah.
I think you've summed it up pretty bloody well there.
That was
Because
easy.
it is dangerous.
Yeah, it's dangerous work and it shouldn't need to be.
No.
I don't think anyone should be vilified for what they do. If that's what you want to do with yourself, then fine, do it. But you shouldn't then be putting yourself in danger in order to do it.
No.
Abortion should be banned. Now, this is very touchy. I think I know my views on it, and that's fucking no. Because I'm very, very anti-religion, and the whole abortion being wrong, stems from religion in that life is sacred no matter what that life is. I don't believe personally that a baby is a baby until it's out of you. If it can't survive on its own, like in terms of not being inside you, it is not a life.
Yeah.
So I don't agree with abortion being banned at all. I'm very, very passionate on that.
Yeah, I agree. For so many examples, like the R word, if someone does experience that and then they're pregnant, you should have the choice. And this,
But even beyond that, you should have the choice regardless. It's your body. You have the choice with everything else. I don't see why that has to become a government issue, for example.
No, it's nothing to do with it.
It's shut the fuck up. This is why America's fucking shit.
Yeah, it still bases all of its thinking and laws on a...
Well, God says it.
Yeah,
fuck off.
2,000-year-old book. Well done. Yeah. Well done. I agree with you, Tay. Fundamentally, I think that here comes something clippable. Possibly bannable. Cancelable. But I'm just going to chuck it out there. If you don't want to put it up, we obviously blank
I
this.
can cut it out, yep.
Yeah. If anything, I think that more abortion should be promoted.
Okay, I disagree there.
Fair enough. I'll explain why.
Go on.
Because clearly we're not educating people as to how you look after a child. Clearly we're not. Otherwise, you wouldn't have full prisons, would you? So there is something clearly very wrong in the way that we are raising individuals, or the fact that anybody's allowed to have one. That is not good. That is not good. It shouldn't be the case that anybody can go and buy a dog. If their intentions with that dog are to basically beat it, treat it like crap, and then let it go and chew people's arms off, I'm sorry, in a very, very weird and strange way, it's an accurate comparison to kids that are abused, treated like shit, or used as a way of getting as an advantage for the parents. There are some people out there that genuinely have children because they can get enough benefits to have a better life.
Yeah.
That is incredibly wrong.
Yeah.
And that is not fair on the kid, because they're going to be raised by someone that doesn't even want them. They've had it just because it's a financial benefit. You're not going to be a good parent if that's why you've had a child. Don't allow them to have them. Otherwise, you're going to get abhorrent, poor, twisted people in this world that have experienced hell on earth for like the first 18 years of their life. They need to go and take it out on someone because they don't know how to, deal with it. And then you get murderers and Lord knows what else. I'm not saying that every kid that's had a bad life goes and kills someone, but just reduce the risk, will we, for Christ's sake?
I mean, yeah, it's a touchy subject, obviously, neither of us being women. So we only have limited experience with what that can be like. And I know that they can be traumatic and stuff like that, and that's the argument for the other side. But I've always said, and anyone who's ever spoken to me about this topic will have heard this, is I think that there should be a universal basic standard for you to have a child. I'm not saying that there's, a monetary guideline, because I grew up, and Dan grew up, very poor, relative to this country. Mm-hmm. We grew up poor. So if there was a standard set, then no, I don't agree with that. But I think there should be... This sounds really weird, but you'll see where I'm coming from. When you rescue an animal, and they'll come to your house and they'll make sure that it's a good environment. They'll make sure that you're in, a relationship that's not toxic and all this sort of stuff that's going to hurt. I think the same thing should be done for children.
Of course.
If you're living in a 2-bedroom council flat, you can't have 16 kids. Do you see what I'm saying?
Of course I do.
It's like, that's where I stand on it. It's a very, very contentious subject, hence the whole point of this. But my view is, no, they shouldn't be banned. I'm not saying they should be promoted, like fucking running TV ads on that. But, no, they shouldn't be banned at all.
And people will probably be a bit offended, and you shouldn't be. Just don't, because it's ridiculous. But making the comparison of children to animals, people, you're dehumanising children. No, we're not.
No.
We're trying to show the process off of if you've got to have a house vetted for a rescue dog, how on earth is that not the minimum standard for having a child? It's the standard for fostering them. So if you've got to do all those checks just to see if a child is safe in your home, surely those checks should apply pre the child being born.
Yeah.
I think it's insane that we're all too touchy. Yeah, but it's everybody's right to do what they want. It's their child. It's their life. No,
not when it becomes the burden of a taxpayer.
Well, that part.
That's wrong.
Also, the harming of the individual, the child itself. That's the most important thing in all of this process when you're talking about kids, is the child. So, look after them. Teach people how to look after them properly. And then if they clearly are not going to be capable of doing that, some 16-year-old girl, bless her, that's just about to take her GCSEs, falls pregnant, doesn't know how to process anything, it can ruin the whole life. And it's like, why are we not considering this? Don't be so butthurt. Look at the facts of it. Let's try and fix the problem, and then we can worry about the emotional aspect afterwards. There we go.
Right, every citizen should be mandated to perform national public service.
No.
Not a chance.
No.
I'm not interested in doing anything for this fucking government, so they're not going to force me to do it. Fuck you.
Yeah. I also disagree with the concept of war. You want me to hold a gun and whack a helmet
Public
on and go and
service
shoot?
isn't necessarily military, but...
No, true. Okay, yeah. And that is a good point, actually. I think there's some plus points to general public service. Like, well, wait a minute. I think everybody should know how to do basic first aid. I think that there's no harm in every human in a country where you have the resources to do this, to train them on how to potentially save a life.
Yeah,
I think that's a very positive thing to do. If I'm not talking about sticking every 15-year-old in an ambulance with someone who's had the leg cut off. Like, I'm not saying that. But there are some fundamentals that can end up becoming a benefit to the public. And if we're going to call that a public service, then I think that that's discussable. But to try and tell me that I've got to, be a fireman for 2 weeks, when in this capitalist society, we all have the choice of what career we want. You're just going to strip that choice away from me temporarily, make me do this so that I've contributed extra, when actually, because of my skill set, what I could have done is set up a company, employed 15 people, given jobs, had more money flowing around an economy, because that suits my skill set. My thing is not saving lives or stopping buildings burning down, granted, but I'm allowing people to make better choices and have, hopefully, a nicer life through their career. So,
or in my case, much worse choices because I have more money to do it.
Or that. Yeah. But that's an interesting one, that one.
Would you do me a favour?
Yeah.
Would you grab my vape off my desk?
Indeed, mate, yeah.
Because I can't deal with any more of these topics without nicotine. I've been without nicotine for an hour and a half and I am fucked. Yeah.
Chomping at the bit. Yeah. By the way, Tim, I think that we shouldn't be doing all the questions on this, because these are huge topics that we could you could in theory do one whole podcast on each of these topics. I'm not saying we should, I'm saying you could. And the problem is there's only X amount of contentious topics that we can ever discuss. So I do think that we're probably better off
this was supposed to be a bit more quickfire than what we've done. We've gone into it a bit more than I thought we would. But
they're huge topics, mate.
Yeah.
I think if we just kind of blitz over it without any pros and cons, we're sort of almost doing the topic a bit of an injustice.
Okay, we'll do one more list and we'll leave. Cause we've got 4, so we'll do one more.
Yeah, do a part 2.
So we've got education, health, or technology. What do you reckon? I'm not going to show you what the questions are, but
let's go health.
Health, okay. Healthcare should be universal. Now, again, we'll talk about this country rather than globally, but
Right. Okay.
Because it's just easier. Because yes, there's arguments both sides if you go global. So
Well. Oh yeah. Okay. That does change things. Healthcare should be universal. What I don't agree with is a profitable system like the American privatized version. I don't think it's fair that a family that is doing a job that society needs, that could be a cleaner, a bin man, anything that's got a relatively low salary to it, to expect those people to pay 50 grand for an x-ray or whatever the hell it is. It's absurd.
Mm-hmm.
These people have got to get insurance. There's no choice. So you've created an industry that wasn't necessary because you're just trying to get the rich more rich.
yeah,
Like these insurance companies are making money hand over fist. And then they always try and find caveats for not doing the payout. So it's like the poor American public are basically, they haven't got a choice. You've got to pay $50 to $1,000 a month for healthcare insurance. And if they don't have an income that allows that, you're basically saying that people can't have healthcare.
yeah,
That's mad.
yeah. The fact that life has a price on it is mental.
Yeah.
Yes, it should be universal. I saw an example the other day. I can't remember who it was. I've got two people in my head. It might be neither of them. I've either got Steve Austin or Bas Rutten in my head. I know it's a bold. I was watching a podcast the other day.
What was in Stone Cold Steve Austin?
Yeah, he was on a podcast and he was in hospital for something or other, and they accidentally sent him an itemised bill of everything in his hospital stay. He was drinking these little 250ml cans of root beer like that.
Yeah.
They were billed at $12 each. There was another one where, the Hall's cough drop things?
Yeah.
They came individually packaged by a company called Safecore, because fuck you. And they were billed at $10 each. Not pack,
No.
each suite.
That is ridiculous. And again, that's capitalism for you, my friend, and that's why I hate it.
Yeah, it is predatory
Yeah.
capitalism, though. It's fucking ridiculous.
Yeah, you imagine
So,
that.
yes, it should be universal, and fuck the companies that
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah.
All people should be vegetarians.
No,
No.
it's subjective. Again, I think there's certain moral fundamentals. Like, I don't think there should be animal abuse. I think that the way that meat is now, the animals that we're consuming are no longer treated as. They're basically, the farming's gone too far. But the farming has to happen because the volume of people. We're not putting rules in place to reduce population growth. If you do that, then you can actually farm ethically. Currently, there can't be a way of farming ethically when you've got McDonald's, Subway, and all these humongous brands. Basically, you need a country half the size of the States, the whole of the North America continent, to just farm the animals that we consume on a daily basis. That, my friend, is insane. There definitely should be more of a balance so that it doesn't kill the environment, because obviously the meat trade has a huge impact on environmental situations and condition. So I think there's a balance here. I think there should be a reduction in possibly the amount of meat consumption, but again, it depends on what a person's objective is. Telling an individual that's happened to be born on this little floating rock, yes, you can do this, no, you can't do that, is a strange thing to put across, especially when it comes to what you put in your mouth, like diet.
Yeah.
You should be able to choose what you want, as long as you can afford it. But, yeah, so, no, you shouldn't tell people they have to be vegetarian. I think that's not good.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
It's just as bad as well most of the time, because obviously with growing stuff like that, anything that is in the vicinity that could hinder the growth of said things,
Avocados, for example,
have to be killed effectively, and it kills just as many things. It may not be cows and pigs, but it can be shrews and frogs and insects and everything like that. You have to kill everything in a certain vicinity in order to grow a lot of the stuff that is eaten by people who don't eat meat. So I don't think morally it's any better or worse. If it's a health benefit, fine. I've got no issue with if you want to do that. I don't think that there is an enormous health advantage to not eating meat, really.
No.
So yeah, fuck them.
Okay.
Euthanasia should be banned.
Go on, you go first.
No, it shouldn't. Again, it's very much like with the sex work thing, the drug use thing. It's your life. You do what you want with it. If, for whatever reason, you feel that you shouldn't be here anymore and are not able to do that yourself, it's insane to me that technically suicide is legal and euthanasia isn't. Yeah. So you're excluding the people that can't do it themselves, who in many cases have a stronger case in which to not be here anymore. It should definitely be legal with the proper steps in place. It shouldn't be a flash decision, because a lot of the time other avenues, when you're at rock bottom, for people who don't have terminal illnesses and stuff like that, there is a pathway out of it. Of course there is. So with the proper steps in place, if it came to a point, well, like with Switzerland, where if you meet certain criteria, you have certain health conditions that are known to be very degenerative and will hinder you. You'll be able to hear them on the mics.
Yeah, wait a second. Oh, lads, you have to quieten down a bit, sorry.
I think like in Switzerland, where the proper things are in place, where you have a degenerative disease that is going to kill you or render you immobile, vegetative, anything like that, and you want, say, your last memories of you with your family to be that of you relatively healthy, but at a point where it's only going to get worse, absolutely. I have absolutely no issue with that at all.
Couldn't agree more. And I'll make this a bit personal, because I think that kind of adds value to it, really. I remember my mum having the conversation with me and growing up and seeing. So luckily, this sounds pretty sick and morbid, but her dad, my granddad, passed away very quickly. Like, his eyes started going, but he had a decent standard of living. All of a sudden, he falls ill. Within 24 hours, he's dead. That, it sounds fucked, but was such a clean process, and it was so much easier to get over. Versus my nan, 5 years later, had an extremely big stroke. That stroke then led to 3 years of hospital and care home bills that my family could not afford, that was basically eating up any inheritance that would have been benefiting, say, my mum, for example, or her brother. And my nan ended up having like 128 strokes after that one. I was watching her die day by day. And it's like, okay, I wanted to be there and make sure I could still see her, to be part of that kind of family process. But fundamentally, that woman should have been given the opportunity, when she was still of an able mind at the beginning of her first stroke, to say, this ain't going to get better. I don't want my Down syndrome son or my daughter seeing me, or my grandchildren seeing me like this, literally being like fed water with a sponge. All we could do was dab water on her mouth for her to be hydrated. It was a joke, mate. It wasn't living. She was literally a vegetable that couldn't communicate, couldn't do anything, wasn't happy. There's no way that if there's any sort of consciousness left in there, there's no way that individual was happy. I'm sorry. And as a 12-year-old boy, I decided at that point, if my life was ever going to end up like this, I would go to Switzerland. Yep. No questions asked.
100%.
12 years old, I realised that. And it's like, how can a government put a law in place to stop you making a choice about yourself? This is ridiculous. But yeah, so I'm very much pro the euthanasia thing, especially with the right measures put in place. Like you said,
obviously, you can't just let people do it like that. It's not. You're not legalising murder, if you know what I mean. You can't just get your mate to shoot you in the head and be all right. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, like the things in Switzerland where you go, you have consultations with the people, they talk to you, you get offered therapy, you go through the therapy. If you come out the other end and the reasons are sound, you then are put into a room with your family. You are then given the plunger for the IV
or the pills. They also do a pill.
Well, yeah, the example I saw was.
Syringe.
He had motor neuron disease, and it was a drip, and he had the plunger, and he switches it on.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think in that case, you've sort of exhausted every eventuality, and it's still the case. I mean, he in this documentary, I wish I could remember the name of it because it's really good. He's not upset. He's not down in the dumps. He's relatively happy.
Isn't there a Louis Theroux
It
documentary?
might
on
well be
this?
Louis Theroux.
I
It
think-
probably is, because I've watched a lot of Louis Theroux,
He is good.
and he's relatively happy, and that's the way he wanted to go. He didn't want his family to watch him.
Degrade.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm totally on board with that. The next one.
Here we go.
Vaping should be banned.
Oh,
Go on, owner of a vape company, you tell
why
me.
not? So, this product, again, if I went completely absolute, then the truth is a human being should have the mental capability to choose not or to choose to consume a certain substance, right? Unfortunately, nicotine is extremely addictive, like as addictive as you can possibly imagine a substance to be. I think there are studies now that show that actually it's more addictive than heroin, right? Nicotine. I genuinely think there are quite a few studies that show that. I'm not saying it's deadly immediately, but
No,
as addictive,
no.
right? My father was a smoker from the age of 13 because it was promoted to him back when he was 13 years
Yeah.
old. It was advertised. People were told to do it. He started doing it. He tried quitting through hypnosis, patches, gums, you name it. He tried everything. It took a very, very seriously, like, life or death moment for him to realise he had to stop. We were both given a primitive vape device, and the thing saved my dad's life. Like, whether I profit from it or not is not my fundamental primary driver. My driver is helping give other people opportunities to come away from a deadly habit that shouldn't be allowed to be sold. It shouldn't be, but if the government won't listen to the people that are dying and the family members of those that have lost relatives through cancer, through whatever smoking-related diseases you can imagine, to think that we're going to hammer down on an alternative that so far has been the only thing in the last 100 years to impact smoking rates in a, I'm going to say, positive way in terms of driving them downwards. Nothing has come even, a millionth close. That doesn't make any sense. That was the worst English I've ever used. But there's nothing comes close to being as impactful or helpful on an economy, on a society, for reducing smoking rates. To think that, well, oh yeah, but they might have the same problems with that one. Look at the short-term health studies. Look at the short-term impact of both products, combustible tobacco.
The way
vaping.
I've always worded this to people is because obviously I used to work in the stores. I of the vape company that Dan owns. And people would say to me, and I don't know, it's anecdotal, it's not, evidence-based, but you look at when smoking became popular in the, say, 20s and 30s, when it really, really boomed and was being promoted to people and everything like that.
Yep.
Within 10 to 15 years, they'd realised that it was actually dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
By the sort of 50s, people knew that there was negative health effects for smoking.
Yeah.
You think of the technology that was available in the 30s, 40s and 50s, and they found out not derogatory, you know what I mean, a bad side to smoking that quickly.
Yeah.
Smoking in its current form has been popular, I believe, since 2002.
Vaping, sorry.
Vaping.
Yeah.
Vaping in its current form has been popular since about 2002. So we've had 22 years now of modern technology, and there has not been one definitive health study that says that vaping is as bad for you as smoking.
No.
Of course there's not.
To the best of my knowledge, I don't believe there's a single globally agreed or non-tobacco funded study that actually shows that vaping has a risk of causing a terminal disease.
Yeah.
There currently is nothing for it. And it's very, very simple. And this is what people don't want to hear because it sounds too simple. But it is the burning, and by the way, I mean the definitive word burning, not what you think burning means. I mean going over a certain temperature in degrees Celsius or Fahrenheit that burns a product that then releases carcinogenic chemicals or whatever. Like, we know that. That's the fact. So by definition, vaping or vaporizing, you're not burning. And people don't get it. They just see what looks to be smoke and they go, no, it's the same thing. It's just as bad for you. Educate yourself a little bit, please, before starting these ridiculous comments. People like the Tates of the world coming out with, oh, sucking on a battery. You're obviously inhaling batteries. You're not a stupid man, I don't believe. But you're coming out with stupid comments like that. Do your research and then start a discussion point. But to put millions of people off of a product that has just saved millions of people's lives you're killing people. you're proactively saying, don't do that, it's no better for you, you may as well just smoke. Then that is hurting people. Your advice is literally causing damage. And I got no time for it. There we go.
There we go. Comprehensive.
I hope so.
Smoking should be banned in all public places. I can go first or you can go first. Up to you.
You go first.
No, it shouldn't.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely not. People can do what they want. The people need a place to do it. In a social aspect, outside is as good of a place as you can get for something like that. I agree it should be banned indoors, absolutely, for people who don't want to avoid that. It's a lot easier to not go outside or to sit outside somewhere because you don't have to be that far away from people for it not to affect you. I think if people want to do that, they should have the right to smoke. I don't think it's good. Obviously, it's not good for you. I wouldn't do it anymore myself. But people have a right to do it, and they should have a place to do it.
Yeah.
Simple as.
Voila. I agree. Yeah.
Cool. People should be legally required to get vaccines.
No. That's I don't like that personally.
No,
because I think you should have free. If you're going to say that we have free choice, then allow us to have free choice. I think that if you force everybody to take a vaccine that has not been studied correctly, I'd hate to bring up examples here, like a very recent one that I shan't reference because I might get banned or cancelled.
That's also not entirely true, but go on.
It had, in comparison to any other vaccine that's been released to the general public, it had so much less time spent on it, developing, studying. Yes, there were studies done on it. No one's disputing that. But look at the amount of negatives that have come out the back of it. Young men, like the amount of young men below the age of 40 that have got serious issues now, health problems, ongoing, because whatever was inside that vaccine has disrupted the DNA chains. It's disrupted what is a human's biology. It will do by nature, because that's the whole point of it. You give someone a small dose, they get an immunity. Wonderful. Has it worked with COVID? No. Have I had 3 vaccines? Yes. Have I had COVID after my 3 vaccines? Yes. Your vaccine don't work. It doesn't work for what its purpose is.
No, that's not strictly true, because not all vaccines are designed to eradicate it. What? It was designed to lessen the effects of it to the point where it's not deadly anymore.
Right.
So you can still catch it because of the style of virus that it is. You can still catch it, but that's why old people get the flu vaccine. They can still get the flu, but it's far less likely to kill them.
Yeah.
The COVID vaccine was exactly the same. And while people do spout this thing, well, look how quickly it came out. Yes, but never before have we had the world's scientists all simultaneously working on one thing. Yeah. So in terms of man hours, and in, time spent in that sense, it's probably had more testing than any vaccine in history, because it was a global immediate problem. We've never had something that was such a global threat, that was such a quick onset and was deadly immediately. So I am completely on board with people legally required vaccines, because vaccines rely on herd immunity in terms of the people that then can't access vaccines. If for whatever reason you can't take a vaccine, you have to rely on the people around you being immunised from this disease in order to protect you. If every fucking knobhead who thinks they know better than the world's scientists stop taking vaccines and suddenly start spreading things like polio, measles and mumps, which are all deadly, you then put in direct risk the people that can't access vaccines because you're a selfish, stupid cunt. I am so passionate about vaccines. People who think that they know better than fucking scientists. Yes, okay, it was probably a bit more rushed in terms of the production. But in terms of people getting ill from it, there is a study. I wish I could name it because I can't, and that's going to count against me. You look at the negative effects of any vaccine, there are people who have bad reactions to it. The problem is, you don't hear about these ones because they've been having them for 30, 40, 50 years. And there's definitely a bigger pool of people for people like the polio vaccine that have had a bad experience with it than with COVID. But
not as many people.
The pool is far bigger with COVID because it was such an immediate threat. Anyone who doesn't think vaccines don't work isn't a fucking scientist.
Well, no, of course, a vaccine.
And you know where vaccines being dangerous came from?
Cool.
It was one scientist in a medical journal who was paid by an alternative vaccine producer to say that a certain type of vaccine was ineffective.
Mm-hmm.
They've then taken that out of context, and now there's now a movement that thinks that vaccines are dangerous because of this one doctor. He wasn't saying vaccines don't work. He was saying that his one that he was selling was better than an alternative.
Yeah.
You're a fucking idiot if you don't get vaccines. Simple as that. Yeah. Would you like to add anything?
I would, yeah. Because the counterpoint to that would be, okay, you had the globe's population of scientists all working on the same problem. Were they working together? The answer's no.
No.
And the answer why it's no is because of capitalism again.
Mm-hmm.
The predicament you've got here is there are people becoming billionaires off the back of a medicine. You can't trust, if you can't trust communism, right, as a concept because of greed, then you can't trust a rich person, or any person for that matter, to make the right choice for the majority when they can benefit out of it themselves. The society is not set up for global vaccinations to be a viable, truly moral process. And hence why we had 3 vaccines come to the market. The people that were on the chair of those 3 companies became richer than they ever have done before. And one of those people was bloody Bill Gates, who owns one of the biggest companies in the world. But for some reason, he becomes even richer when he releases what is supposed to be a cure. The media tell us all of these aspects of what could work, and I'm not an anti-system, anti-media person strictly, but I think fundamentally they created a scare culture. Everybody was scared, other than me, but again, I've got my own reason for not being scared because I don't value life that much for myself. Fuck it, if I die, I die. What is, it doesn't really matter. But that's my subjective thing. But anyway, the average individual cares so much about their own existence and life, of course it instills fear. And all we had, my own father, bless him, just believed every single word that came out of a BBC reporter's mouth during that process, and all it did was worsen his life. I'm not saying that the disease of COVID didn't exist. Of course it did. And again, I definitely believe a scientist in terms of their logic versus my own, 100%. There's too many variables, though, that muddy the water there, and it is capitalism as being one of the big ones. If you can be the first scientist to create this vaccine, you're going to get a pay rise. I bet you they had to incentivise the scientists to do this. Also, one thing you can't fix, time. It's all good and well getting every single scientist working on the same problem, but if you need a year to see the impact and you don't give it a year, then you're not doing a fair test. That's not a valid way to produce a vaccine. Yes, they had to do something. I'm on board. Yes, we had to try and create a solution. I'm on board. Do I think that that was the way to do it? And then to tell people, whether you trust this process or not, whether you trust the individuals that are going to benefit from this or not, you have to have this shot in your arm. The only reason why I took any of those vaccines is because I wouldn't have been able to see my mum, and she wouldn't have been able to cope without seeing me within a 3-year period. So for me, this sounds sick in the head, but it would either be potentially my mum committing suicide, or me seeing her and me just taking the risk of having a vaccine that I don't want. Now, I'm not going to be the trigger point for my mum's death. I'm not. So I went and got my 3 vaccines, just so I could travel. It's honestly the only reason why I got them, because there was not enough data for me to feel safe about consuming that vaccine. However, the polio, the measles, the mumps ones, they've been around for 50, 60 years. They've been tweaked regularly, and they've also wiped out those diseases almost completely from the face of planet Earth. Almost. That is a successful mechanism. I understand what you're saying. The purpose of that vaccine was just to reduce risk. That, to me, is a poor vaccine, really. A vaccine should be there to end it, to prevent it. If you're just reducing the risk of death, but you're still allowing spreadability, you are going to have that problem ongoing, where certain people can't go get their jab on a certain day. There would have been families in the UK that have got 80-hour-a-week working patterns. They wouldn't have had the time, because their employers wouldn't let them take time off work to go get the vaccine, possibly, where they are stuck and they can't get it. But it's like, they should be allowed the choice, is my thinking. I do appreciate your viewpoint that the majority should be more considerate of their actions to save and help and look after the minority. I'm massively on board with that overall logic. I think it's the means of how we're trying to get there I would disagree with. There should be more time spent on something before you go injecting it into someone's body. My own 2 pence.
Fine.
Yeah.
Obesity should be labelled a disease.
Oh, God. Obesity
Do you want the fat bloke to talk?
Oh, yeah, go on.
No.
Yeah.
No, it's not a disease. It, in the literal sense of the word, yes, it is. It is a dis-ease to my life to be this size. I am fully aware it's through my own actions, and even not as much as a lot of fat people. I don't mind admitting I have and had an eating disorder. So that's the reason I went from a bit fatter than Dan to this in about a year. And I've stayed there because there's something wrong up there. I'm not trying to convince anyone that I am on a par with someone who has another disease. I could do something about this. Yes, it's a bit harder because it's a mental health issue as opposed to just a health issue for me. Mm-hmm. But absolutely, if I tried hard enough, spent enough money to get the therapy and everything like that I need in order to sort my head out, yes, okay, I can change it. I can reverse it of my own accord with no real medical intervention. Therefore, it is not a disease.
Mm-hmm. Fundamentally, I agree. Yep. I think that, again, it's the wording, isn't it? Obesity should be labelled a disease. I think the term obesity is a description of a certain size and mass of an individual. That is what the word obesity is used for, and that is all it is. The disease can't be the cause, or the problem. Does that make sense? It's like Parkinson's is a name for a disease. What that does to you is make you shake and lose some of your motor neuron controls, basically. So, that's an example of a disease. I think if you start going, from consuming too many calories, that's a disease. No, the choice was bad, and we've got to understand why the choice was made. Yeah. Or the choices, rather. I think you've spoken very rationally and logically there, Tay.
Yeah, I'm not in denial. Do you know what I mean? It's not. I understand that what I've done to myself will have impacts later in my life. I know that, but that I had my reasons for it, i.e., mental health issues. I didn't know what I was doing at the time, and I haven't been able to reverse it properly. But. Yeah, it's just people who think it should be piled in with other things. I understand that if there are reasons for it, then yes, okay, there should be certain provisions that help people, but you shouldn't get a blue badge because you're fat, is what I'm saying. Do you know what I mean?
I totally agree, mate.
So, yeah.
What we got next?
A very, very touchy issue.
Yeah.
Now, the way this is worded is odd, because I got all these off a website. For debate topics. So, the way it's worded is sexual orientation is determined at birth. Now, that to me says that you're gay from birth, you're straight from birth, you're whatever from birth.
Sexual orientation?
Yeah. As opposed to male or
gender.
female.
Yeah.
That would be gender. That would be not orientation. I mean, I can answer both if we think. If anything's going to get me cancelled, it's this. But
yeah.
In terms of gender, yes, you are assigned a gender at birth. Fine. If you want to change that gender later, then do that. I do believe that there's only two, though.
Yeah.
Now, this is the bit that's going to be a bit contentious. I have absolutely no issue with people with trans people going from male to female. Fine. Absolutely no issue at all. I can understand in certain cultures where there is a quote-unquote third gender, i.e. Native Americans have something called two-spirit, which is something completely different. That's cultural, though. Yeah, it's not lawful. No, it's not implementing all this shit into law. Now... that's where I got on that. In terms of being gay and that, from birth, you can't determine that. I don't know why someone would, like, if you go back to say the 50s, 60s, stuff like that, where it was a little bit, well, not a little bit, it was very, very vilified. I don't know why someone would actively make the choice to make their life harder, unless it was predetermined. So yes, I agree. Gay, straight, bisexual, whatever from birth.
Very interesting. Okay. I equally have an opinion on both of these things.
I feel like this bit's going to get cut, but
I'll just say it. I say it as it is, because if I have freedom of speech...
No, I mean my bit.
Oh, yeah, well, fuck it. You've got to be able to say what you think. How is it okay that somebody who is, say, going through a gender change, they're allowed to tell me what I should be calling them or referring to them as? But for me to have an opinion prior to that point on the general topic is not okay. That's insane. You can't tell me I don't have an opinion. So here comes my fucking opinion.
Well, I will just interject. If someone comes up to me and asks me to call them something specific, I will do that. I have no issue with doing that. If someone says that they want to be called they, them, or anything like that, I will do it. I've got no issue with you as a person. I have an issue when it becomes law, and I am obliged by statute to share in your personal beliefs.
Yeah, it's not happening.
That I don't have. That I have no time for. It's the same as religion. You can do whatever you want, just don't preach it at me.
Yeah. That's important. So,
sorry, go on.
The gender from birth, yes. It's not even a point for debate. I don't actually know how it's even become a point for debate. It isn't. Let's just leave that there. It's driving me insane hearing all of this complete waffle. Don't apply your opinions and your emotions to a fact. There's no place for it. And if you do that, what you're doing is basically saying you can't get the way that you want, but you're going to change it so that people treat you differently. No, thank you. I would love to be treated with special treatment, but I don't go around asking for it. I act in a certain way, then if people want to treat me with respect and a rewardful way afterwards, so be it. It's off my actions, not off what I just want to happen in life. So that's numero uno. The sexual orientation in terms of your sexual preference, this for me is a very interesting one. I've thought about this a hell of a lot, probably more than I should have done. Now, when I was born, I grew up in a split parent home. So my mum looked after myself and my brother more than my father did. My brother, just for a point here, he is gay. He that's his sexual preference. Wonderful. No issues with that. I got to watch a young boy grow up to then eventually identify as being a homosexual man, right? What I saw was an environment influence it, is what I saw.
Okay.
Here's my own personal thinking about my own sexual preference, right? So I identify as a heterosexual man, a straight man. I've thought about this so much of late. Part of the reason why I stuck with it, and I now identify as that, and I say I'm not gay, is partly because of societal pressures to do so. I think this is genuinely true. So if I had given myself the open-minded outlook of, why don't you try it, see if you like it, and then give an opinion, right? As an adult, I have not given that an opportunity. Why do I refuse to give it an opportunity? Because of social pressure. It is probably the truth, a subconscious social pressure. I, for some reason, identified more with heterosexual men as a young boy, and I thought being a man entailed that. Therefore, if that's my identity, I should follow suit. This is me analysing myself. It's not a conscious thinking process. I've had to consciously think about my subconscious. That's what I've tried to do here. To break myself down and understand why I identify as XYZ. I believe that your environment and what's around you has a humongous impact on it. Because, for example, if I was not exposed to what sexual preference was, then all of a sudden, imagine you're born into a white room. You stay in that white room, you have education, but you don't really discuss what sexual matters are. All of a sudden, you plonk a naked hot woman in a room and a naked hot man. You could probably test on that individual which of those two people, genders, whatever, aroused said individual, or both. I know, this is a very weird thing to say on a podcast, but I don't really care about what your opinions are of me, so deal with it. I know fully well that I have had, as a kid, when I was about 12, 13, somebody put like a gay porno on in front of me, right? I got aroused. Not to the point of going, oh, I can't wait to sleep with men, but it did something to my brain that I understood it was a sexualized process, and my anatomy then acted upon that in a way that I had no control over, right? Now, does that mean I'm gay? Does that mean I'm bi? Does it matter? For me, it doesn't really matter. I've just made a choice. This is the way I review myself. I've made a choice to keep trying to find women to be with or a woman to be with rather than men. So I actually think it's a choice thing rather than an at birth, I'm definitively going to want men if I'm a man or a woman. I honestly don't think it is as easy as saying I was born that way. But that's just my opinion.
I can see your point. I just Yeah, I don't necessarily agree.
Yeah.
But that's life.
That's what we're doing. That's the whole point. And also, have you noticed that you and I have managed to discuss certain topics here, disagree on them? I don't hate you. I don't think less of you. You have a different opinion to me.
I don't hate you any more than I did an hour and a half ago.
I'll take that. That's a plus point, to be fair. But you see what I'm saying? You can have conversations without taking every single word so personally. Stop it, all of you, because you're doing my head in. Just be conscientious, nice, and live your life.
Please say you've seen the Ricky Gervais thing.
What's that?
The guitar lessons thing.
Probably.
Oh my God. If you haven't watched it, watch it. It's hilarious. I'm going to tell it, but it's not as funny coming from me. And he goes, offense is a personal thing. You have to take offense to something. You have to be offended. It's a transactional thing. I say something, you get offended. If you don't like what we've said, then it's not for you. It's fine. It's like going into a town square, there being a notice board there with a poster that says guitar lessons. Ripping the poster off the thing. I don't fucking want guitar lessons. It's fine. It's not for you.
Yeah, literally.
But instead, these people are ringing up the guitar teacher going, are you doing guitar lessons? Yeah. I don't fucking want them. It's all right. They're not for you. Fine.
People want to be offended. That's what it is.
They fucking love it. Yeah.
They do.
Anyway, this is probably the last time you'll see us, so I hope you've enjoyed. Have a good one. See you later.
Thank you. Can't be on it, I just said, you little prick. Mate, that makes a fucking clip in itself, just me fucking around with this wank for time. Look at the state of that. Yeah, it's gonna get clipped, isn't it? I'm getting clipped as we speak. You fucker. Oh my God, why does it keep...